Ladies and gentlemen, this is Scott Pollock, Chief Editor of the Critical Post Chicago, reporting. Welcome to another edition of the Critical Post Chicago Report. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning us in over here at the Critical Post Chicago. We appreciate it. We picked up some new subscribers on our YouTube broadcast channel, and we'd like to welcome those folks into the community as well. And we hope that the word will be spread by everybody that we can bid to make mention of the Critical Post, so that the people of this country begin to see the difference between relevant news and everything else that people are being entertained by and entrained by in all the other media combined. There's another Bittersweet Records Radio Hour music podcast available for you to listen to at bittersweetrecords.net, and also the head page of the Critical Post Chicago. It's pretty entertaining. We think you'll enjoy it. Again, the Bittersweet Records Radio Hour uploads every Wednesday night and Thursday morning at bittersweetrecords.net and the head page of the Critical Post. It is available for free download, usually until Saturday mornings, at which point we disable the download capability. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're glad for all of the new subscribers on our YouTube channel. We're hopefully reaching an audience that wants to be informed about things that are important rather than being entertained by what they're seeing in the news, because the only thing that's going on in the news is entertainment, as I've just mentioned. And I'd like to break away from some of my scripted comments to tell you that we haven't been on the air for about a month now. First of all, there was so much noise, we didn't even want to try and compete with it. The presidential election season beauty contest has now had two primaries, or actually one caucus, which is the Iowa caucus, and a New Hampshire primary. And now what we see is a clear demarcation of what's going on in the political party process in this country. Now we see, as we have focused on before, we see that on the Democratic Party Corporation side, we see an avowed socialist who's never been successful at anything except running for office, saying he's going to tax the rich, emerging, challenging the alleged frontrunner and the darling of the media, that being Bernie Sanders, challenging whether or not Hillary Clinton is going to be anointed, as everybody in the press, the left-leaning press, has been bidding to do. And then on the other side, we see the Republican Party establishment coming to grips with the fact that Donald Trump, with his conversation, who is an avowed crony capitalist, who says he's not going to be influenced by anybody in the establishment, emerging on the right side of the spectrum. So we now see the absolute, perfect, clear line demarcation of the Hegelian dialectic in full-throated view in the media. Alternative and major media corporate conglomerate socialist press. I've never seen a more stark difference and a more clear example of the Hegelian dialectic. Ladies and gentlemen, the trajectory of this country is not going to change as a result of either of these individuals. I just want to make that clear. That's an opinion, but this is not going to change. Ladies and gentlemen, how could you possibly trust a news desk in this country if all we did was follow what everybody else is doing? So we didn't want to compete with the noise. We just didn't want to compete with it. I didn't want to compete with it. Our report about the victimization of Dewana Breedlove has been stalled because the reporter that is handling that was in the process of moving. Julia May is still sifting through the material, but we are going to get to it. And what that is pointing to is a lot of corruption going on with money from Iran that flowed into this country in the late 70s and early 80s during the Carter administration. So we're going to get to that. Yeah. The nuclear ambitions of North Korea took center stage over the weekend, and they launched a missile with a satellite that was being reported by those that were paying attention to it was tumbling around, but now that it has been stabilized. Ladies and gentlemen, North Korea is China's junkyard dog. And nothing that North Korea is going to do is going to affect the United States of America. Now, what needs to happen there, in my opinion, is the Chinese transnational fascists and the Western Alliance transnational fascists all have to agree to take this man out at one point or another. And we've said that it might as well drop a nuclear bomb on that country. But they're not going to do it. Now, that's just my opinion. Okay? I don't know how they're going to take it, but China uses that man to rattle a saber to jangle everybody in the East, or excuse me, in the West. That's my opinion. That's what's going on there. All right? So I don't see any consequence as a result of any of North Korea's ambitions, other than the people of South Korea, who the United States pays to keep protected, gets worried every now and then that this kid is going to do something stupid. Yeah. So I can't see anything that's been important over the last month, other than what I've just cited, as being anything. The only thing that the press is reliably reporting on, whether it be the major media corporate conglomerate socialists or anybody in the fear pornography press, is murders happening or people dying in various parts of the world. There hasn't been any mass shootings lately. And the other thing that they're reliably reporting on is the weather. And that's it. Meanwhile, your tax rate for capital gain has gone up to 28%, and your income taxes have increased. And that's the only thing that means anything, and that's what has changed. And you will continue to be forced to be socialists, whether you like it or not. And it's just not going to stop. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you some improvements that we've made at the head page of the Critical Post. We have Martin Armstrong's economic confidence model right at the top there, so you can see where we are in terms of the downturn in the economies around the world. This is not just America. Okay, we're also starting to carry some news feeds We're carrying Zero Hedge. We're going to add Reuters. We are carrying the AP Newswire. We are carrying. This is an article from Zero Hedge. If you, anytime you click on an article, you'll go right there. There are we're carrying Forex market news, and we're carrying financial market news, breaking financial market news, and the most important financial market news is probably in mergers and acquisitions. So we'll continue to make improvements in the critical posts so that you can get the things that are important and not concern your day with a bunch of stuff unless all what you're looking to do is be entertained by the news. The various other things that are going on. The Hulu just did something with Triumph, the puppet dog that this guy does. Very interesting. It has gotten a huge thing on YouTube. We find it to be very entertaining. You can see that at the head page of Critical Post if you're looking for a good laugh. Yeah. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, another thing, development is, I think we've made the decision that we're going to be turning the Critical Post into a not-for-profit tax-exempt company and applying for NFPTE status or 501c3 status and look for grant funding as the year progresses so that we can hire some investigators to do some digging around. We're a small staff, as you know, at the Critical Post, and this costs a lot of money. Our investigation into Neil Keenan cost us $2,000. You know, that man is still doing what he's doing, which is absolutely nothing but begging for donations. Now, I want to get back to our script here. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of our continued effort to provide relevant content, the following is a report which supports our bias regarding the nature of our present foreign policy and domestic policy here in America. That view states that fascism is the rule of the day throughout the world and here in America. Fascism, as used here, means private enterprise in full lockstep partnership with national governments. That, in fact, another part of the agenda concerning America's military is providing the strategic and structural backdrop for economic benefit to NATO alliance and quite particularly American-founded transnational corporations. Whether any of this activity is good for the American taxpayer, that thrust is of dubious intent, but rather only inures to the benefit of stockholders concerning the American and NATO alliance-founded transnational enterprises. The concealed purpose of this fascism, besides the global regime of economic interdependence, or corporatism, as it were, which benefits the corporations directly, is revealed in the fact that a private corporation's activity when doing business with, in and around any of the national governments cannot be directly addressed by anyone in the public, even stockholders, because no one can know the exact conversations that take place in the cigar smoke-filled rooms between members of boards of directors of these transnationals and their governmental henchmen. Even boards of directors meeting notes of publicly traded corporations do not belie the nature of those conversations. Therefore, if no law is on the surface being broken, no power of subpoena can be invoked in a discovery process of court litigations or motions by the people, because the people would have no standing other than people who are stockholders, and in that particular, there would have to be a lawsuit claiming some malfeasance or other, which would have to be tendered in the first place to begin to cause testimony, discovery, or cause arbitration preceded by depositions before the facts are admitted into court records. As the propaganda continues to roll out from the socialist, major media corporate conglomerates, and the fear pornography alternative press regarding the war on terror, the presidential election season beauty contest, pop culture celebrity gawking, and other internet feedback entrainment loops supported by people's addictions to their smartphones and tablets for entertainment as news. A couple of interesting news items by Reuters, unseen by most except perhaps in the financial press, and they were mere blips, appeared in recent headlines. The first report states that GE has just inked a $328 million deal with the country of Iraq to build a new electric power plant to provide 1,000 megawatts of power to add to Iraq's current electricity grid, which, according to many recent reports, will aid Iraq's limited ability to provide reliable electric power. And this can be characterized in terms of their electric power as being spotty in most places of that country. People don't get electricity 24 hours a day in Iraq. As to the type of power plant to be installed, there is no mention in the press release. Presumably, it will be a nuclear plant, as that is one of GE's product lines concerning their larger contracts. In terms of any noticeable blip on the stock market activity concerning GE's shares, there was no overt discernible effect. General Electric is trading for the last year or so in a range from 23 to a high of around 30 with dividends of about 22 cents per share. It usually tracks consistent with the Dow Jones Industrial Average and is likely to remain in that pattern as one of the average's legacy equity stock instruments upon which the average is based. What this report by Reuters concerns and confirms is more activity regarding the global regime of economic interdependence. GE, being one of the largest American-founded transnationals in existence, is now a large beneficiary of large contract economic activity as a result of American military intervention in the Middle East. It's another real reason that the war on terror exists besides the competing pipelines to Turkey between the Eastern fascists and the Western fascists. This is something we've reported about to this audience in the past, that is, namely, that the war on terror is a semantical operation in many respects that manipulates the world's populations to make popular the use of military means to subdue the activity going on in the Middle East, and its metastasizing influence seen in the activities of maturing Muslim males operating as an organized army. The activities of these young males are the results of Muslim cleric child abuse by indoctrination into a jihad mindset for the past 40 years, centered on their young male children, and whose effects we shall continue to combat until the Middle East's populations have been composted and transformed into a more civil nature. No one knows exactly when that shall be. I'm going to break away from the statement, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the market, we're seeing a swoon in the dollar, and we're seeing a spike in commodity prices, namely in gold and silver. And there's a lot of financial hand-wringing going on today. We are in a downturn, but I'll mention that in a minute. So as the dollar goes up, gold and silver go down. As the dollar goes down, gold and silver goes up. And that's what's going on in the market today, and the markets across the world are swooning. The second report by Reuters concerns one of America's oldest stock exchanges being sold to a Chinese-led investment group known as China's Zhongqing Casin Enterprise Group. The sale would still have to go through an approval by regulators, but in our view, that will be a minor hurdle, which in the end will be approved. Though the exchange handles only about 0.5% of all transactions in the American market. Part of the aim is listing Chinese companies on an American exchange while importing its trading model to mainland China to develop equity markets further there. That stock exchange is called the American Stock Exchange, and it's located in Chicago, Illinois, and it's mainly used by hedge fund managers. In the meantime, according to Martin Armstrong's economic confidence model, the world's market activity is in a downturn as the markets roll in a deflationary manner up and down in a 100 to 300 point swing in both directions. According to this macroeconomic indicator, the world's markets will remain in this downturn until approximately the end of October, where the markets will again head back north. So take note of that and position if you're in the stock market and you're watching this stuff, position yourself accordingly, because this economic confidence model has been fairly accurate since Mr. Armstrong learned that it worked. If you want to keep an eye on it, you can come to the head page of the Critical Post, and we have it linked, and it'll go straight to the website where it resides. And you can read about how it works. So as again, in today's headlines, we see the prices of gold and silver forming temporary spikes as a result of the U.S. dollar selling off a bit in the foreign exchange rates markets, though to hear the criers from the financial press tell you what they think the world is about to end. Panic selling in equities is something that occurs quite regularly if you look at the markets with a macro view. Equities are and have been a bit extended beyond the true value for a few years now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just another Keynesian market bubble. Make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen. The global regime of international economic interdependence is in full swing and will continue to mold the world to its objectives, and that is to control most of the world's resources for those most heavily invested in the markets, whether that be retail investors or the primary beneficiaries whose capital can be seen as some of the largest shareholders in companies such as GE. Other companies would include the major banks. Other companies would include the major investment firms. Other companies would include the major defense contractors, East and West. The interwoven network of the boards of directors in these companies continue to macro plan, along with their partners in the central banking cartels of the world, to plot the destiny of humanity through political and military means, using the United Nations as a steering committee. Accordingly, we don't see anything coming down the pipe politically or militarily that will change this outlook in the near or midterm futures. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is this. When you see corporations such as GE conducting massive contracts outside the lands here in America, you can be sure there is a military component that allows them this ability, and that the members of the federal government high up the food chain are somehow complicit in the exercise of this power. Whenever there is corruption reported in the press of this nature, in other words, corporate corruption, white-collar corruption, as far as we can tell, no effective negative, either fines or jail, have ever been, in the history of this country, successful at curbing this activity. So it shall continue. Anybody who thinks they can get away with this kind of financial mayhem, they're going to do it no matter what. And no law is going to stop them. The interlocking and or cross-pollinated boards of directors of all these major Western and Eastern Alliance transnationals is something very worthy of you to take note. If you want to know who is implicitly responsible for what appears on the international stage and with diplomatic steering from the United Nations, look no further than the largest transnational corporations' boards of directors and the names of those individuals so noted in their annual reports. And I want to break away. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start looking for the names. And it's going to take some investigation. I don't know exactly when we'll be able to get that done. But we're going to tell you who's cross-pollinated in these boards of directors. And the boards of directors change every year or every couple of years. However, a study was done by the chair of systems design, ETH Zurich University, authored by Stefania Vitali, James B. Gladfelder, and Stefano Battiston, and will be available at the head page of the Critical Post if you cared to read that document. And in that document, what it states is there are approximately 147 corporations that own 40% of the world's resources. The other relevant document that you might find interesting, and we're going to link this one at the head page to note, is from the University of California, Santa Cruz, by research professor William Domhoff, D-O-M-H-O-F-F, Domhoff, which can also be viewed through the head page of our publication when we link it. However, due to the nature of boards of directors and their ever-changing landscape, no one in the press knows exactly who is pulling what strings where and when they are pulled. But you can bet that that's what's going on. Now, there are two major companies that work with the United States government as contractors. Foreign policy is mainly, from what we've been told by one of our people, Paul Collin, it's called Systems Planning Corporation. They're the ones that actually direct foreign policy at the behest of our major American-founded transnationals. The other company that directs domestic policy in this company is the Rand Corporation. Look no further than those two companies. For an updated view of the major transnational corporate mergers and press releases, one need to look no further than the research done by Yahoo, whose link can also be found at the head page of the Critical Post. It's not on there yet, but we're going to keep you informed of the major mergers and acquisitions process. Because actually, ladies and gentlemen, that's where all the consolidation of the world's wealth is occurring. So, we're not going to follow this narrative that everybody else is following. This anchor desk is not going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. When something important is to be noted, you can bet that you'll hear it from this anchor desk. Again, this is Scott Pollack, Chief Editor of the Critical Post Chicago, reporting. Thanks again for tuning in to another edition of the Critical Post Chicago Report. We'll see you soon. That is all.